to welcome you to this installment of the WL Mountain Speaker Series. Before we get started, please turn off all cell phones, close all laptops, and we're honored to have with us today Ms. Ruth Ann Marshal. She's recently retired as president of America's MasterCard International, where she was responsible for building all aspects of the issuance and acceptance, of MasterCard's issuance and acceptance business in the U.S., Canada, Latin America, and the Caribbean. In 2005, this region accounted for more than half of the company's worldwide total. During her career, Ms. Marshall's achievements have added tremendous value to the payment solution industry. A recent example is the creation and implementation of the PayPass technology. The experiences and insights that Ms. Marshall brings to us this afternoon will add tremendous and valuable knowledge to our community, and I'd like to ask you to welcome Ms. Ruth Ann Marshal.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you. I'm delighted. Can you all hear me? Great, good. I'm delighted to be here. As I look across this audience, it doesn't seem that long ago that I was sitting in one of these seats in a similar MBA program, but as a point of reference, it was a long time ago, because I was born in 1954. And just to kind of start my talk, I look back at what things looked like in 1954. And in 1954, tangible assets of non-financial corporations were 73%, 3/4, versus just over half, 53% today, which says that you're in the right place. You're in the right place to be advancing your education at Tepper School of Management, because human knowledge is the fastest growing factor of production. I was invited here today to speak about leadership, and I've chosen to speak about the personal attributes of leadership. Who doesn't want to be a great leader? Any hands? That's right, everyone wants to be a great leader, and everyone has something to say on the topic. Looking at the most recent bestsellers, you've got Winning by Jack Welch, The Real Deal by my largest customer, Sandy Weil, or The Way of the Shark by my friend and sometimes golf partner, Greg Norman. I know many of you have already proven yourselves to be very capable middle managers or senior managers in companies. So what is the difference, and what's the glide path from being a very capable middle manager to being a very, very capable and successful and great leader? Whereas good managers focus on achieving specific results, great leaders are credited with creating compelling, far-sighted strategies. James Well, the first administrator of NASA, said the leader is simply the one who knows what to do next. I prefer President Truman's definition, which is leadership is the ability to get people to do what they don't want to do and like it. Inherent in leadership are those that you are directing. Leadership occurs among people. It is not something done to people. Transformational leaders develop followers to go beyond their self-imposed limitations. You must paint a vivid picture of a desired future state that makes the pain of change and personal investment worth the effort. Said another way, you must learn to liberate the leader in everyone. In order to do that, you must adopt the perspective of the people you're trying to influence. The picture that stays in my mind is a scene in the diner of the movie As Good as It Gets. Do you remember that? Where Jack Nicholson describes his admiration to Helen Hunt by saying, "You make me a better man." So what makes a great leader? Are you born with it? Is it too late to develop? To the last two questions, no and no. There are as many different types of great leaders as there are snowflakes, but some common attributes do exist. Envision your own role models. I really want you to do this. I want you to think just for a second, and when I say great leader, think of a picture of a person, and in your mind conjures up the idea of a great leader. It can be someone in academic world, a family member, someone that's no longer with us. Leaders tend to have a passion of purpose, be decisive, exude self-confidence, have high integrity, be capable of independent thought, and possess a persistent drive for excellence. Leaders are tireless, succeeding where others fail, especially in adverse conditions. So who does this well? One of the leaders I admire is T. Boone Pickens, a great entrepreneur. He says, "Don't fall victim to the ready, aim, aim, aim syndrome. You must be willing to fire." Another CEO of my former employer, Lou Gerstner, surprised Wall Street within 90 days of taking the helm at IBM by saying the last thing we need right now in this turnaround is a long-term strategy. This was shocking from the lips of a former McKinsey consultant. How do such great leaders go about executing their plans so successfully? First of all, you must slow down in order to speed up. And I know that's difficult for all of you A-types. You must heighten your senses to listen, observe, and absorb. Larry Bossidy, former CEO of HP and author of Execution, The Discipline of Getting Things Done, agrees with John Kotter, best-selling author of Leading Change. He says you first must create and establish a sense of urgency. Secondly, you must form a powerful guiding coalition, or as I would say, kitchen cabinet. Third, you must develop a compelling plan of action, not some vision statement or mission statement on the hallowed halls of so many of our headquarters today. Fourth, you must be able to communicate widely and often, and I would say sealed with a kiss, meaning keep it simple, stupid. You must, fifth, be able to empower employees, and I would add with accountability. Sixth, generate short-term wins. 7, consolidate gains, and that usually translates to incremental revenue or dollar cost savings. And finally, number 8, institutionalize this successful process into the organizational culture, or as I would say it, weave it into the fabric of the business. My greatest hero and father and former vice chairman of AT&T, Charles Marshall, says it much more simply. Great leaders are adept at being able to teach, reach, and preach. 2 examples of brilliant strategists in my former work life are Richard Kovacevic, CEO of Wells Fargo Bank, and Vernon Hill, CEO of Commerce Bank. Richard Kovacevic is noted for saying, "Banking is necessary, banks are not." He is making Wells Fargo a powerhouse retailer by measuring the number of financial products procured by each of his customers and incenting his workforce to double that penetration. Bucking the trend to move from bricks and mortar to clicks across a switch, Vernon Hill implemented a very simple 10-minute rule: to open his bank branches 10 minutes early and stay open 10 minutes late, enhancing customer service and differentiating his bank's reputation from other competing community banks. What does a potential great leader look like? Well, look in the mirror. You don't need to be a member of the Mensa Society. Apologies to all of you 4.0 students. As Albert Einstein cautioned, we should take care not to make the intellect our God. The mind has powerful muscles but no personality. Intellect cannot lead, it can only serve. First of all, to thine own self be true. Everyone recognizes a fake. Leaders are honest with themselves. Start by ascertaining your own style by using a tool developed such as a Myers-Briggs test or many others that are out there today. In fact, I'm going to give you, if you write down anything, and if you don't write it down, I'll give it to Beth. There are 3 personality quizzes online that I think you might find very helpful. The first is the Myers-Briggs test. It's an opposing traits theory developed by Carl Jung, and you can find it at knowyourtype.com. The second one was actually developed by Dr. Lee Anna Clark at University of Iowa, and it helps you predict your success in a particular job that you're thinking about. And this is a long name. She needs a marketeer to help her with the naming convention, but it's test.personality-project.org. And the last one is the old ink blot test, where you look at ink blots and you say what you think, what you see in that ink blot versus someone else. And that's a nice, easy name to remember, tickle.com. A popular rebirth of style today on the heels of self-serving rogues at Enron, Tyco, WorldCom, and Adelphia is the selfless servant, turning the organizational pyramid upside down from the old triangle to more of a sieve. and taking great stock in 360-degree feedback, both internal and external, which helps a person, a manager in particular, rid of the blind spots. The best leaders I have known also have a great intuition or gut instinct. It's hard to measure, but very noticeable in crisis situations. Speaking of crisis, let me mention a few personality flaws that can be career derailers. To be intimidating, to be an isolationist, to be overly ambitious, an extreme micromanager, or unable to hire people that you could work for someday. As I look across this audience, I realize that you will develop the products and services for the next generation. I will be investing in you as a consumer and an investor. So how do I see the business world changing for you? The great Peter Drucker says in Managing the Next Society that future leaders must balance three dimensions: human, economic, and social. As a global economy, we must appreciate global differences. Americans' way of ensuring stakeholder sovereignty is very different, for example, than a German's quest for social stability. Another consideration is the new group of major stakeholders in our largest companies, employees, who own a major company interest through retirement and pension funds. They have the clout to demand shorter-term rewards from corporations that employ them. Finally, the days of the company man or woman are gone. We are franchise players, a nice term for mercenaries. There is no entitlement. Every company must compete for the best talent and fight vigorously to maintain those precious assets. With better data metrics and means of communication, companies are promoting more self-directed work. This job flexibility is no longer limited to tech writers living in the woods of Maine. Finally, co-opetition is alive and well, a newly coined phrase describing the ever-prevalent collaborative relationships being formed with former fierce competitors. Co-opted partnerships are ventures that are cobbled together through mergers and acquisitions in order to leverage economies of scale and provide vertical integration of product offerings. And you can think of a lot of them. The one that pops to mind to me right now is XM Sirius, but you can think of a number of them. In closing, the world we work in today demands that we become global citizens. Broaden your interests and expertise. Be nimble and take this time to soak up varied life experiences. Challenge yourself, because growing pains will not leave stretch marks, but develop more self-confidence in the unknown. Finally, have fun. Otherwise, the journey's not worth it. I congratulate all of you in being here, and I wish you continued success. Thank you. And now the best part, where you have a chance to ask me anything, and I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
So I'll go ahead and just help to moderate the questions. Anybody want to take the first stab?
When I was looking at your background, I mean, I was focusing on MasterCard, and now that you're speaking more about leadership, could you tell us a little bit more kind of about your background?
Sure, anything, absolutely. I spent 18 years at IBM, a great place to start a career, and I know that a lot of you have spent time in the field of technology. And it was mostly through sales. I sold computers at a time in the late 70s when most companies were manual. And so I was literally going in and replacing a bookkeeping machine or a manual process and having to go on in and understand how a company works and then automate that through software and mainframes. So I spent 18 years at IBM, and then I was plucked out of IBM to be a president of a couple processing companies. One was called Bypass, and it was about a $60 million company in Atlanta, Georgia, where we were the largest processor for supermarkets and petroleum companies for payments. That's kind of what got me into payments. And then I also managed a company called MAC, which is an ATM network, like Honor, Star, some of those, you know, like your debit card it used to have, rather than just Visa or MasterCard, it used to have a regional network tag on it. MAC was one of those. And then after being with that company, for about 5 years, we decided to take the company public. And rather than going through an IPO, we thought it would be in our best financial interest to run a process. So we ran a process, and we chose a company by the name of Concord EFS that is now owned by FDR. We sold this $250 million revenue company for $1 billion. And I was bought as a part of the transaction because I was the COO, I ran the company. So I went over there and I did that to kind of integrate those two companies together. They were similar sized companies. And then I got a call to be president of MasterCard for, I think for the first 6 months it was the US, and then I got Canada, which was North America, and then the last couple of years I had Latin America as well. So that's three different jobs, I would say. The names changed because there's so much consolidation in the workplace today that the names changed, but it was basically 3 career moves on my part.
I find in the literature that oftentimes we learn most when we fail. And I was wondering if you could speak to some of the things that you've learned from your own personal failures.
Sure. I guess there are probably numerous terms of personal failures, but I'll try to think about the workplace. I guess the one job, we'd be here all day. The one job I can think about, it was funny, I heard the word quant. I mean the term quant, I'd never heard of that before. It tells you how out of touch I am. So I guess this was a quant school. Well, I'm not a quant person. And I have tried to find my way, even though I've spent my career in processing technology companies, I've tried to find my way to do it in a way of being more of a marketeer, a leader, and a communicator, because that's what I was better suited to be. But I somehow found myself in a job of being responsible for the numbers for the 1/5 of MasterCard. I was a planning person, is what they called it. And so I had responsibility every quarter, not so different than certifying financials for SOX compliance today for this big region of IBM. And it just didn't suit me well. I mean, to me, you miss a decimal point, you miss a 0, what's a big deal? And so I learned that my 5-day work week became a 7-day work week. It became 60 hours, and I found that I had to surround myself with the best and brightest people that are much more detail-oriented than I am, and buckle down and do something that was not really tasteful to me, but was really critical to do. That I couldn't just talk my way out around this one, because there was no explaining when a number was missed or when a forecast was missed. So that's the one that I think stands out most. Yes?
I was wondering who you think are the best leaders that are working in business today.
Best leaders. Every industry has a different leader, but I think today it's the companies that stand out to me that provide exemplary customer service, to where you're just shocked and surprised and delighted, whether it be a Lexus, an American Express, a Nordstrom's, and unfortunately it's a short list. And I see the nodding of the heads because the list is short and we all know who they are. And those are companies that really truly believe the customer is always right. And if you really have a valid complaint, it's not, they don't take the perspective of the company, but they take the perspective of this is an annuity stream, this is a future customer, this is a customer that complaint could go to 10 different people, and I need to preserve this relationship, and what can I do, be empowered as an employee, no matter where you are in the company, to make it right. Ritz-Carlton is another good example of that. Yes?
Do you think that the emergence of the celebrity CEO has some way damaged companies, or perhaps even the image that people have about CEOs?
The last part, I got the first part. Was the last part?
Do you think also has damaged a little bit of that perception of people, how much people value the CEOs? I mean, CEOs have become a little bit of a controversial figure sometimes where they didn't use it.
I think we go through ebbs and tides in terms of the type of CEO, just like the type of skill set. Are you looking for a general manager or someone that has real expertise? But yes, I do think these CEOs that made themselves bigger than the company itself, made it difficult for those companies to follow in their footsteps because they didn't do the proper succession planning, they didn't do the proper job of developing bench strength. And I think that's part of the reason why boards, I serve on 4 boards today. That's one of the new things I've done since I've retired. And that's why boards are taken much more seriously and really truly provide more of a system of checks and balances to the CEO than they might have in the past. Yes?
You talked a little bit about a kitchen cabinet. When we, those of us sitting here, start to think about developing a kitchen cabinet in the first sort of 10 years out, how do you go about identifying those people? Are they close to you? Are they far away? Are they in different sectors? And then I don't know if there are any examples of how that group has helped you throughout the years.
There are 2 things that come to my mind. First is trust. And in the kitchen cabinet are your closest advisors. And they can be anywhere in the organization. It could be someone 5 levels, and I hate that kind of talk, removed from you. But there's still people that you can reach out, you trust, and you know will give you an opinion and really give you the straight talk. And I think the first thing is someone that you really can trust, that will be straight with you, that is not just someone that is impressed with you and wants to advance your own career and therefore will tell you something that you want to hear. The second thing is to answer to the gentleman's question earlier, and that is, I think a good kitchen cabinet is comprised of people different from yourself. It's really important that you don't hire and surround yourself with people that look like you do in the mirror. I mean, I know what I'm good at, and I know what I'm not good at. And I would surround myself with people that were good at what I was not good at, so that our combined product or service or offering was much more complete than what I could do with people that are like myself. Yes?
Do you believe that there's a difference in the role of leaders in the small organization and leaders in the big organization?
Did you all hear the question? Okay. Yes, I do. You do oftentimes see, you don't see leaders of large organizations go to small organizations much, but you oftentimes see leaders of small organizations take on bigger organizations because we're still kind of hung up with span of control and bigness, especially size, especially in the U.S. But I do think the difference, because I have managed smaller companies and bigger ones, and I've networked with my peers in both, and I think that the CEO of a smaller company has to be more hands-on. They've got to have more detailed knowledge. They have to have more expertise. They have to be able to wear more hats, and more is expected of them. Whereas in a large company today, so much of your time is spent on the outside world, having nothing to do with the product and services that you're selling to your customers, that it's really critical that a CEO of a large company be a person that knows how to work with Washington, D.C., knows how to work with the press, knows how to do public communication. So I do think there are different skill sets. Both equally as viable, but different skill sets. I'll start in the back and then I'll move up. Yes, sir.
The question I have is, was there a situation where people close to you or your advisors were telling you to go in a certain direction, but your gut felt going in a different direction? And how do you make those decisions? And how long before you start trusting your gut or the advisors?
That's a really good question. And I can think of situations. Yes, I would always get the opinion from people on a certain subject, because I wanted to be sure before I made the final decision, if it was important, that I had really listened to all perspectives. And I really was open-minded and really turning up my hearing and taking away my preconceived opinion and really listening intently. But if at the end of it, this is where the buck stops here, at the end of it, as the CEO, as the executive responsible, if my gut still, even if I couldn't define it very clearly, told me something else, I would go with that. And I guess it was because in my own career, I found myself looking back successfully, if I were to look at the win record of those decisions, And therefore I would go with that. What I thought was important though on the heels of that though is to explain to your advisors how you got there, because otherwise they think, why I'm wasting my time. She's asked me to do this exercise, I'm spending all this time and energy, and she's going to do what she wants to do anyway. That's not what you want to have happen, because then the quality of work the next time you ask for it won't be as good. So I would try to take them through, even if it was a feeling process, how I got there. And definitely after the fact, I'd say, you know, that's what was stirring up in me. That's the picture I had. Or that's what I was worried about, and see how it manifested itself. Yes?
If you think back to business school, which activities help you the most to develop your leadership skills?
I'm sorry, say it again.
If you think back to the time when you were in business school, which activities help you to develop your leadership skills the most? What would you do differently? Or
yeah, in business school. Well, see, I went to business school, an executive MBA program while I was at IBM. So I've got, and at the same time, I was also traveling as a part of their training program. So I had no time to do much other than work, study, go to school, period. So I think if I were to do it over again, there'd probably be different experiences that I might have gotten out of my class had I been dedicated to school, but I wasn't. I had just a full 24/7 kind of schedule. But I will tell you the best thing, first of all, to get the degree. I don't care where you are in your career. It's very competitive out there. And if you have an MBA and it's a jump ball and someone else doesn't, it's an advantage, because it shows that you passed someone's test to get in, you stayed there and got the degree, and you had a chance to network it with a bunch of other very bright, capable people. But in a further answer to the question, I think what I got most out of the MBA program, other than the degree, was that I chose to get my MBA in finance. And again, I'm not a quant person. I got my BBA in marketing, and the reason I got my MBA in finance is because I knew I wasn't good at it, and I knew I needed to be, and I knew that one of these days I wanted to manage a P&L, and I had to force myself through that process to where I could be more capable. And it did help me. Looking back on it, it helped me a lot in business cases to do the right kind of analysis and to be able to certify the financials and be able to communicate with the CFO. Even though I never felt like I could be a CFO, I felt by going through the MBA cycle the way that I did, I could manage the financial process. Yes?
I'm sure there's no one thing that you could say led completely to your success, but if you could point out one thing that was maybe the pivotal moment that, you know, if that never happened, you may not be where you are today, or just something that was really significant.
Well, actually, it has nothing to do, it wasn't during my career. The reason I did as well as I did through my career was being a communicator. I'm very comfortable communicating, and I enjoy communicating, and I was therefore, in every company I was with, I was the voice to the people within the company, and I was voice to the outside world for the company. And the big aha for me was I was at Northwestern University doing my undergraduate work as a freshman, and they needed someone to dedicate the student center at school. And I got selected to do it. And I was in a situation like this, and I was speaking to the group, and I loved it. And afterwards, all these people came up to me and said, "You're pretty good at it." And so that's, I took that nugget away, and I enjoyed it. And so throughout my career, I found ways to do that and add value to the company. Yes?
Do you think leadership styles of the two genders are different? And also, do you think that one style is better suited for a different situation, like in crisis or turnaround and things like that?
Let me first of all, you said, do I think the styles are different by gender? Was that the first? A gender? And then do I think, what was the second part of it?
The leadership styles, if they are different, if they are better suited for a certain, maybe a turnaround or a crisis or something like that. Do you think that plays a role?
Yeah. It's funny, I did a speech earlier this week about women leadership, specifically about women and gender bias. I think that's changing over time. I think as women get more exposure to sports, to broader fields of interests, and as the people that influence us, whether they be ministers or teachers or playwrights or songwriters or authors, as they don't stereotype roles so much, I think that the leadership attributes will be more similar. That's the answer to that question, but I think there's still some differences. I mean, as an example, I was talking to someone before we came in here today. It was on either CNN or CNBC that they asked the same question to a man and a woman, and then they measured the number of words for the answer, and for the men it would be like, boom, and for the women it would go on and on and on and on, and I was like, oh my gosh. But so there are some differences like that, whether you call it right brain, left brain. But now in terms of the leadership style for a turnaround situation versus a growth situation, absolutely yes. And I'm involved in that now because one of the big things that a board does is pick a successor. And you should always be looking at succession planning in a board. So I'm very much involved in the 4 organizations that I'm a part of looking at the company and what stage are they in and what kind of person would we want next. And in my own experience, when you're in a turnaround situation, you need someone that can come in and slash and burn and not be a bleeding heart and just be very net because you do not have much time. And yet, in another situation with growth, you may need more of a nurturing personality and more of a communicator. So I do think that the type, for a given company, depending on its cycle and where it is, there are different leadership styles that are more appropriate. Yes?
Sort of a follow-up to that, in the gender question, we read all the time in the popular press and books are written about it, that as a woman executive, your choice is either to be the doormat or the witch. How do you avoid that?
I have seen a lot of that. I've seen a lot of the witches. Women are their own worst enemies. And I've seen some doormats as well. But I think the way that, how do you do that? Because I was not either one. I really wasn't. And I mean, how do you look inside yourself and say, and how do some of the other women that I know, Meg Whitman, who I know, or Sally Krawcheck, how do they, I don't, it should be an answer. If I had golly. Well, the reason I can't is, so I'll just answer for myself. I'm a leader. I'm a driver, I'm an eldest child, I'm a Taurus, I don't care however you, ENTJ, I don't care how you line it up, I'm very consistent. So there's no way I could be a doormat. I'm just not built that way. And in terms of being a witch or stepping on others to get ahead, I just wasn't raised that way. I think it's really, really important to be able to look myself in the mirror at the end of the day and know I did the right thing. And if I didn't do the right thing, I need to very quickly correct a wrong. That's just how you're wired as a human being. And so I don't know how, so it's hard for me to imagine people that serve themselves first. It's never resonated with me. And I don't think you get ahead. I think that there's karma, there's comeuppance, what goes around comes around, and you cannot, over time, it will not serve you well. And it's definitely not serving others well. Yes?
Continuing on the gender issue. I'm interested, I mean, we keep hearing this, that you do not have a lot of women leaders because it's a old boys club or whatever. But as we find more CEOs or women in the leadership roles, do you think they try harder to get women in positions of leadership, or do you not see enough talent out there? Or I'm trying to get a picture of what is, in your mind, what the reality is. Is it really women being excluded, or opportunities are not there, things like that?
So I was visually describing earlier, maybe it was, that when I joined the workforce in the late 70s, it was like a hard top. And then it was like the glass ceiling, and now it's like a moonroof. I mean, I can see the stars, I can feel the air, it's changing. When I joined the workforce, the only women leaders I can think of were presidents of universities, or I think Patagonia had Ma, and I think she's still with us. But I mean, it was family businesses. It was where the father died and the mother took over. And they were very isolated. While now, if you look at Fortune 500 companies, 13% of the officers are women. It's not. It's like 20% of the people here, I think, are women. So that's progress. Now, only 7.3% of those are in line C-suite positions, meaning they're generating revenue or they're managing P&L. But I do think it's absolutely changing. You're seeing women more in technology fields and finance fields. But with all that being said, if I look back at the 3 boards that I managed at MasterCard or the boards I'm on today, I'm the only woman. But I think as you have children, that will change. There is still some gender bias, and like I said earlier, I think it starts with the people that influence us as to how we think of each other and what we think our capabilities are. But I also don't think, though, I hate the idea of tokenism. I hate the idea of having policies of saying you need to have so many women and therefore you should have so many seats in here filled, even though their GMATs and their grades don't warrant them being here. I want to earn the right. And I mean, if I look out this year, in terms of 2007, and I'll be politically correct here, Hillary Clinton, Condoleezza Rice, Nancy Pelosi, there are a lot of things happening in the political arena in the United States that have never happened before. And I think that will be, that will start a progressive movement that will spill over into the business marketplace as well. Yes, sir.
You did a very good job in defining the attributes of leadership. But my question is, as you look back on your experiences within companies, if you're recruiting a new person into the company or if you're promoting a younger person into the company, how do you assess leadership potential? They don't have the whole package yet, but you sense that certain people can develop the package.
That's really difficult to do, and that's where, by the way, the gut comes into play, and looking back at the successful hires you've made. But I first of all look for someone that's very self-assured, has self-confidence. Trust is important, and you don't know trust because you haven't known the person, so you have to somehow ascertain their integrity. And I really use the references a lot to go back to who they work, and not the names they give me, but the names that I can find out, someone that knows them, to ask what was that person really like. I don't think there is any substitute for potential leaders in having at least one successful sales experience to where they have generated revenue, they have run a P&L, they know how to manage the most senior customer level relationships, and financial acumen, whether it be an MBA or having worked in a finance department of a company.
I think you use this quota.
Oh, okay. No, he doesn't. I love his questions.
The latest 2-letter buzzword is corporate governance.
Is what? Say it again.
Corporate governance. Is that just a fad in the American industry right now? Do you think companies are getting serious about it? And also, in your opinion, what is corporate governance?
Well, I'm talking to a bunch of academics. See, to me, corporate governance would be the board's involvement with the company, but my guess is that's not what you're meaning.
We keep hearing the word, I just don't know what it's supposed to mean, what it's not supposed to mean.
Can someone align, because when I've used it in the companies that I'm with, we talk about the role of a board providing oversight to the company and offsetting that of the management, which is the CEO and their direct reports. But is there another term that you're using here that I could somehow translate to my real life experience?
I think that's pretty much what we're talking about.
Yeah, I guess the reason is, okay, so why is it being talked about? Why is that the buzzword? Well, the buzzword is we have had these celebrity CEOs. We've had people being paid for a lot of money without much results. And it's really important right now that you have boards that really have teeth in them, that you truly have independence. You have people that it's, first of all, a small enough board to where they can get involved in the bowels of the business, that they meet a number of times a year. They don't just meet in headquarters, they go out to the offices where this company does business. They have committees, and they really take the job seriously. And I know for myself, it's a very different experience. My father was on 8 boards, and it was more something that's what everyone did. and you'd go to dinner and you'd play golf, and it was a good old boy network, but it wasn't like a job. Now being on a board is a real job, and you better be willing to stand up and disagree with management if you think that the way they're going is faulty for the growth of the company or somehow could smack of fraud. And that takes a little bit of intestinal fortitude, because you're not paid enough to really make it worth your while to do that unless it's something that you really can do properly. Yes?
From where you are now, what do you say is your next challenges, both career-wise and skill development?
I'll be surprised if I get back into the workforce. I worked for 30 years. I did everything that I could hope to do. I don't need to work. I worked hard enough now that I don't need to work. And there are so many things in life that I enjoy doing. Everyone's not like that, and that's okay. But I have books to read, languages to learn, instruments to play. I have so much. My list is so long that I think that I'm going to really take this time and enjoy the fruits of my labor. Now, as a part of that, I'll be on boards, and I really want to do more community work. I mean, everyone says that, but I really mean it. I write the checks, and I'm a contributor to charitable organizations, but I don't have children. I love children, and I would like to do something. There's a therapeutic riding camp near my house in Santa Fe, New Mexico, that provides horseback riding to children. That's like a Make-A-Wish Foundation for children that are handicapped. And I would love to get my hands dirty, to buy a horse, to be out there with a child and watch the glee in their face as they ride a horse or stroke a horse or brush a horse. It sounds simple, but those are the kinds of things that kind of stir my soul at this stage of my life. Yes?
I think it's inevitable that we'll come down to the ethics question. And here we had I'm mentioning mathematical ethics teaching, and I think it didn't add much value to myself. My question for you is, since all the scandals started in corporate America, did you have any formal ethics training, and did you think it actually adds any value to, it makes you more ethical as a person?
Yes, in terms of the training. The big companies, I don't know if this is true with the smaller companies, but the big companies today all have code of ethics. And I don't mean just something that is posted on the website. I mean, we really take the different modules of ethics, whether it be sexual harassment or how you deal with suppliers in terms of being sure that you're not compensated improperly, all the different segments. And we would have online classes on each of those modules, and it was required that you not only go through the module, but that you pass a test on each of those modules to be employed by the likes of an IBM or a MasterCard. So yes, it is important. Yes, it's out there, and it's not just something that's written and put in a desk drawer. Now, in terms of for myself, I think that was the other part of your question. Did it change anything? No, but there are some ahas for me, like in sexual harassment, just to think that how something could be misinterpreted. That caused me to think, I better be sure that if I reach out and just touch someone's arm or hug them, because I tend to be a hugger, that it's invited and that it somehow would not be misinterpreted, because you do tend to look through your own prism at things. So some of that was probably helpful. Yes.
I don't know, I could get your opinion. I know you sort of came to the workforce without having any children, and we have situations today where females are kind of going through trying to climb through the corporate ladder, and then they have kids. What are your advice? I mean, because this kind of brings a lot of issues. I mean, are they going to progress through the organization with just having kids and having to take care of that? To kind of put a roadblock to their career. Just wanted to have your advice on that.
Yeah, first of all, I think the business world has really changed to where quality of life is valued. I was thinking about, by the time I graduated from high school, I had moved 15 times, because in order to advance your career back then, you had to show the company that you were sacrificing yourself and your family to move ahead. And that's what my father and most of his peers had to do in corporate America. That's no longer the case. quality of life and family is really important, and companies value that. Because quite frankly, employees will vote with their feet if that's not valued. Personally, I do think, I recognize that one thing that's not going to change is women will continue to have children and men will not. And some of the best, I don't think so. With all the advancement in medicine, I don't think that's going to change. And some of the best and brightest women that I have known have come into their career, 5 years into the job, they get married and they have children, and they would like to continue to stay working. And these are in line jobs where they're measured on quota. And so at least what I did at MasterCard, my last tour of duty, is we set up a program where if anyone was proving themselves, they were capable, they had to be good employees, but if they were, and the women wanted to take however many years, so they wanted to take not off, but work part-time, 20 or 30 hours. Of course, the pay would ratchet down with that as well. You don't pay them full-time. But if they chose to do that, it turned out to be a win-win-win situation. It was great for the employee, because they stayed till the child was 5 or 8 years old and then came back full-time into the workplace and didn't miss a beat. The customers loved it, because the customer, if they have a good relationship with someone, they don't want that relationship to change. And it worked out well for us. So I think you're going to see more and more of that, like you see at Microsoft and other places. And to me, it's absolutely critical. If you were to ask me the question, what we need to do to get more women in those C-suites or the CEO offices or on the board, you've got to provide for women to have a full life, and part of having a full life is enabling them to have work-life balance between being mothers, wives, and also executives or career people. Now there was someone up there.
On the lighter side, I'm trying to get a grasp of my new image of myself as a mercenary. But on the serious side, Ron Alsop from the Wall Street Journal was in as a previous speaker, and I can remember the chart he put up of one of the issues that he thought was causing corporations to have a negative image was the compensation structure for chief executive officers. Now, you're both an investor, a former chief executive officer, and on board. So what's your perspective?
I wasn't paid enough. No, no. I personally, I can sit here from a board member today. That's probably the best perspective. I am all for CEOs making as much money as the company succeeds, as long as it is based on that and it's in options and it's in highly leveraged elements of pay, not salary. I think salary for a CEO should be de minimis. Most of the pay should be on the variable pay, totally dependent upon the growth for the stockholder and earnings per share. But if that happens, I think CEOs should be paid properly, but not out of sight. But some of the other parts of it too are the perks. I mean, if you enable a CEO to have access to a private plane, that makes sense, because as a person that used to travel not only 3 days a week but 3 weekends a month, I could get to a lot more places and be a lot more valuable to the company if I had been, if a private plane had been available to me from time to time. And yet to be able to take that perk and be able to use it for your family and friends, that just makes no sense to me at all. So, I mean, we could all think of examples like Bob Nardelli and others that are just crazy. But most of the crazy stories are ones where the stock went like this, and yet the executive made hundreds of millions of dollars. Anybody else? Yes?
We could end this on a positive note. I mean, through your career, personal, professional, you had a lot of successes. But if you were to talk about one achievement that you're really proud of, and also why?
Well, it would be the most recent. The book, I was reminded a minute ago by your question, Good to Great, which is a fabulous Collins book on getting the seats in the bus filled with the right people, not being one of those sensational entertainment CEOs, but truly leaving the company in better shape when you left it than when you joined it. And what I am most proud of is what we did with MasterCard in the years that I was there, which were 7 years, and being able to handpick someone that I had groomed and developed and hired to take my place. And to know that when I walked out of there after spending 2 months with him, transferring over, that in fact the company would even be in a better space than it was when I joined it and when I left it. And that really made me feel good.
Any more questions? Because I think we're just up. Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you for having me. Thank you.